On June 18, 2026, the United States and Iran signed a ceasefire at the Palace of Versailles, the same palace where one world order had ended in 1919 and another had begun. After the ceasefire, the headlines told one story: the United States won the war, its bombers flew uncontested, its missiles struck with precision, its adversary's supreme leader lay dead. And yet, something felt off. The deal it had signed returned Iran's frozen assets, restored its oil exports, left its nuclear program in ambiguity. Across the world, governments in Beijing, in Moscow, Riyadh, and elsewhere saw these developments carefully, not as a story about war, but as a story about something much larger: the world order we have lived under since 1991. And all are questioning, is the world order still intact? So if you are also curious about this question, then stay with me for a few more minutes and I will guide you to the answer using international relations theory and history. So let us first understand what a world order is. A world order is what Hedley Bull wrote in his book, The Anarchical Society, back in 1977, a pattern of activity that sustains elementary goals of the society of states. It should have enough shared rules, concentrated power, and legitimacy that most states, most of the time, know what is expected of them and broadly accept it. Henry Kissinger, in his book World Order 2014, identified the pillars on which any durable order must rest, which are accepted rules, balance of power to enforce them, and crucially, a leading state with the will and capacity to underwrite the whole system. John Eikenberry, in Liberal Leviathan, another book, added one more essential ingredient: institutions like UN, the IMF, the World Bank, and the WTO. A world order is, in short, power, rules, legitimacy, and institutions. Remove any one element and you do not have a different order but disorder. And disorder historically is where wars are born. So if there is a war, then it tells us that there is something like disorder there. Now, hold that definition in mind. When Soviet flag was lowered over the Kremlin for the last time in December 25th, 1991, it was the most consequential shift in world order since 1945. President George H.W. Bush declared it a new world order, and scholar Charles Krauthammer called it Unipolar Moment. For the first time in recorded history, the once one state, that is United States, had so completely dominated every dimension of power, military, economic, institutional, ideological, that it had no peer. And the numbers told the story. The United States held a defense budget larger than the next 10 states combined. Its economy was the undisputed engine of global growth. Its dollar was world's reserve currency, anchored in oil, petrodollar. Every barrel sold anywhere on earth, priced in American money. See my other video on petrodollar. Francis Fukuyama claimed in his book The End of History and the Lost Man that liberal democracy had won the argument for all time. History, understood as the great contest of governing ideas from the time of Hegel, was over. The West had won. But the critics were already assembling. John Mearsheimer, in his book from 2001, The Tragedy of Great Power Politics, warned that Chinese rise was structurally incompatible with American primacy. Christopher Layne, in The Peace of Illusions, argued that the unipolarity was overstretched already. Susan Strange, in The Retreat of the State, had already warned that financial power was drifting toward networks not single hegemon could fully command. These were minority voices 2 decades ago, but 2026, they read like a prophecy. So we see that some powers were quietly growing in the shadows of the unipolar moment. By 2025, we see that China's nominal GDP reached 19.4 trillion, already the world's largest economy by purchase power parity. Russia, despite years of Western sanctions, remained the world's dominant energy exporter. And the bloc they anchor in, BRICS, now expands to 20 states, accounts for 40% of the global economy by purchasing power, compared with the G7's 28%. This has been the rise of the West, as Fareed Zakaria would call it in his book, The Post-American World. And it was no longer a prediction. It was a fact on a balance sheet. So it is against this backdrop, this slow, grinding transition between worlds, that the United States war with Iran of 2025 and 2026 must be read, not as a regional conflict, but as a diagnostic test of the existing order. And the results are quite revealing, at least on 3 counts. First, American military power was no doubt unmatched, but American political will was not. By every kinetic measure, it was dominant, but see, it could not convert that dominance into its stated objectives. It demanded unconditional surrender and received a negotiated deal. Second, see that the closure of the Strait of Hormuz exposed the real foundation of American power, not its aircraft carriers, but its structural grip on the financial architecture of global commerce. When Iran began pricing oil passage in Chinese yuan, it caused much disruption. Third, and the most quite devastating one for the old order, China and Russia did not need to fire a single shot. Chinese tankers sailed through Strait of Hormuz unimpeded. Russia provided diplomatic cover. BRICS financial architecture gave Iran enough economic runway to resist. So in conclusion, a world order rests on rules, power, legitimacy, a leading state with the will to sustain it, and international institutions. The New World Order of 1991 had all these in hands of one state, the United States. It is now losing them, not in a single dramatic collapse, but in a slow, grinding way. Iran war did not end the American world order. It did make it tremble and expose it. The Versailles MOU can be seen as a desperate attempt to preserve its most essential instrument, the petrodollar, see my other video, by routing Iran's financial relief package through the American regulated channels and recapturing that nation that had been actively trying to escape the dollar system. This is a tactical victory, for sure, which has come at a cost. The competitors of the world order have seen that the yuan tolls at Hormuz happened. The BRICS payment bridges exist. 40% of the global economy now sits outside the G7. Though for now the US has saved the world order for itself, its clock is ticking. In Antonio Gramsci's words, the old world is dying and the new world struggles to be born. Now is the time of monsters.